Hey guys, welcome back, or if you're new, welcome. My name is Katie. Today I will be talking about David Van Dyke. There wasn't a ton of information on him, but from what I did get, he's a monster. So, this is your warning. So, David Van Dyke was born on January 14th, 1959, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was one of five children and was raised by his grandmother until she passed away when he was 6 years old. He then moved in with his mother, who had trouble raising him. He refused to attend school and ended up dropping out after seventh grade. Seventh grade? You don't know anything. What are you doing? David was said to be a very naughty child. He would break house and car windows, beat up weaker children. He threatened his niece with a knife and often threatened to harm his mother. No wonder she had a hard time raising him. He sounds like a good kid. David would frequently steal money from his mother's purse and would actually pay older children to not beat him up. Growing up, he was often teased about his obesity. It has been said that he once punched a woman for calling him a fat pig. This made him go on to lose 40 pounds through a weight reduction program. As an adult, David could never seem to hold down a job and often would live in cars and abandoned buildings. Between July of 1979 and April of 1980, David murdered 4 women and 2 men at their residences in northern Milwaukee, gaining entry into his victims' homes by asking to use their phone or bathroom. He would then bludgeon, beat, or stab his victims to death using items in their homes. Afterwards, he would burglarize them, stealing money, clock radios, televisions, or jewelry. He then fled the scene, leaving the weapons he used, a tire jack, ice pick, claw hammer, knives, or scissors, behind, and his victims varied in age, race, and gender. David's first victim was 69-year-old Della Liggins, who was brutally stabbed to death on July 19th, 1979. On August 10th, 1979, David stabbed 78-year-old Florence Burkhardt in her North Side home 43 times with a pair of scissors, the fatal wound being to her heart. Her body was discovered by 2 volunteers of a service organization for the elderly who were there to deliver her dinner. Although the attack had begun in her kitchen, Florence's body was found at the bottom of her basement stairs. David beat 79-year-old Helen Ronsky to death in the living room of her East Side home. He then covered her body with a sheet and walked into a bedroom where he rummaged through the drawers of her dresser. However, he did not steal anything from there. Her body was discovered by her son on November 9th, 1979, and she had been last seen alive 1 day earlier. Investigators found partial fingerprints at the scene but failed to match them to any known suspects. On January 25th, 1980, David bludgeoned 63-year-old Charles Golston with a claw hammer. Charles's friends found him bleeding and unconscious, and he spent more than 3 months in a coma before dying due to his injuries in early May. On March 3rd, 1980, 49-year-old Bernard Fonder died on his bed after receiving several blows to the head. A few days before his death, he had given a note to his downstairs neighbors with the name and address of his former roommate, who had beaten him the previous December. He forced the roommate to move out, but the roommate had returned one night in February because his girlfriend had kicked him out. The note instructed his neighbors to hand the note to the police if something were to happen to him. In turn, the roommate was initially charged with Fonder's murder, but released after fingerprints found at the scene did not match his. On April 14th, 1980, a 28-year-old woman let David into her home after he expressed interest in buying her car. She went upstairs to find something, and he followed her. When she had her back to him, he grabbed her by the throat and attempted to throw her on the ground, but instead he accidentally tripped her. After she fell to the ground, he began stomping on her head. When she managed to get up, he hit her in the head with an ashtray. He then cut her with pieces of glass from the ashtray and a wine bottle. She managed to escape her house, first running to a nearby home where the occupant shut the door on her. What? Jackass? Then to a tavern where she received help. David fled the scene after stealing $118. On April 25th, 1980, David sexually assaulted and beat 30-year-old Helen Bellamy to death in her North Side home with a tire jack. Sadly, her 13-year-old son discovered her body partially covered with a sheet in the dining room when he returned home from school. Police sought two men wearing overalls who may have been impersonating television repairmen in connection to her murder. Investigators linked the murders together and compared the fingerprints found at the two murder scenes to every local burglary suspect. On May 23, 1980, David was arrested for an attempted burglary and his fingerprints matched. He was then taken to an interrogation room and questioned for hours until he confessed. He was charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and 1 count of armed robbery. David's trial began in February of 1981. On the first day of the trial, his surviving victim recounted her attack. Against the advice of his attorney, David took the witness stand in his own defense. Although he admitted to 200 burglaries, he claimed that he would never harm a victim if confronted and instead would leave the property. He also confessed to hitting his surviving victim with an ashtray, but claimed it was in self-defense after she cut him with a broken vase. When he was asked to explain the cuts on the woman's arms, he proposed that she injured herself by falling on a broken bottle. He further accused the police of fabricating his confessions, asking the jury how he could confess to crimes that he claimed to have no knowledge of. After deliberating for 4.5 hours, the jury found David guilty on all charges and he was given 6 life sentences. At the time, David was sentenced to the longest term in state history, surpassing mass murderer Douglas Dean, we will go over him soon, who had been given 5 life sentences. He is now imprisoned at the Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. He will be eligible for parole in 2048 when he is 89 years old, which honestly isn't too far away, which honestly is kind of terrifying. But that is the story of David Van Dyke. He's a monster. Yeah, he's just, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, should I even go over these? But then I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. Um, but let me know what you guys think of this case. If you heard of him before. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check me out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!